Britain is preparing for another night of far-right riots after a list of 45 targets was circulated around extremist groups to be hit in the next round of mass attacks on Wednesday night. It comes as nearly 400 suspects have now been identified in relation to some of the violence we've seen rip across vast swathes of the country, especially in the north, after a tragedy in Southport last Monday that left 3 girls dead at a Taylor Swift dance club. And the latest flare-ups were last night in Plymouth and in Belfast, where police responded to right-wing protesters out on the streets. Around 150 cops with shields and full-on helmets were patrolling the streets of Plymouth. However, some senior cops in the Avon and Somerset police said that was not enough to stem the flow of these people walking around, daring to take on police officers, at some points even charging at officers, as well as hurling missiles and fireworks into the crowd. Similarly, in the Northern Irish capital, police are investigating a racially motivated hate crime that left one man seriously injured. That man, in his 50s, is now expected to survive his injuries. However, police are looking for a group of white Irishmen who they say could be behind the attack. Some of those people charged today include Jordan Parler, 28. He has become the first person to be charged with inciting racial hatred on social media. That relates to a string of Facebook posts he made, allegedly encouraging people to go out and join some of this mass disorder. He's expected to appear at Leeds Magistrates Court today. 6 people will also appear at Sheffield Magistrates Court tomorrow, and that is in relation to the storming of an asylum seeker hotel in Rotherham. Some of the shocking videos we saw put online included clips filmed by migrants in that hotel where they were able to identify some of these rioters making gestures indicating that if those people got inside that hotel, there could be some serious injuries inflicted. Police were ultimately able to push those rioters away, and there was a lot of damage to the hotel, but thankfully no one inside was seriously injured. Elsewhere, 8 more people have been charged in connection with disturbances that broke out during protests in Nottingham city centre. 15 people were arrested in total, around half of those have been charged. 28 more people were charged this morning by Northumbria Police, with a special remand court set up simply to deal with the scale of people being hauled before judges to answer for some of their alleged crimes over the last few days. Many police forces have urged counter-protesters not to go out and try and confront some of these far-right groups, saying that that would make the policing job significantly more difficult. On Tuesday night, we saw some Free Palestine protesters take to the streets in Birmingham, which actually forced a Sky News crew off the air. Another man was then filmed trying to slash the tyres of the television channel's producer's van. Those protesters have been condemned by a number of people on the right, with the Prime Minister now under pressure to say that all violent disorder must be clamped down on immediately. It comes a day after Sir Keir Starmer announced a standing army of police officers would be deployed as and when necessary across the country to any location at any time to immediately shut down violent protests and rioting, which threatens to spill into looting and potential riot.
There are a number of actions that came out of the meeting. The first is we will have a standing army of specialist officers, public duty officers, so that we'll have enough officers to deal with this where we need them.
More condemnation came from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who called the riots un-British when speaking to the Today programme, and the former Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu also drew comparisons between those on the far right sparking these looting sessions and terrorist attacks on our streets.
For the second evening, we have seen terrible events unfold in South Belfast. The scenes we have witnessed over the past few days have been horrendous. There's been violence, racist assaults, damage to property, arson, racist slurs unashamedly uttered on our streets. This is not who we are as a society, and the majority of our citizens are rightly appalled by this behaviour. Last night, disturbances for the most part took place in the areas of Donegal Road and Sandy Row, following an earlier peaceful protest in the city centre. Shortly after 10 p.m, police officers came under sustained attack over a number of hours from crowds throwing petrol bombs, heavy masonry and bricks. Petrol was also poured over a police Land Rover, which was then set alight. Thankfully, the crew on board the vehicle were not physically harmed and remained on duty. However, this was obviously a terrifying experience for them and their colleagues and the public to witness and experience. Last night also saw a man in his 50s brutally attacked by a mob in what we are classifying as a hate-motivated assault. Witnesses reported seeing his attackers stamp on his head as other decent members of the public attempted to shield him from further attack. Police officers managed to get this man to safety and secure his medical treatment. He remains being treated in hospital at this time with serious injuries. During the course of the serious disorder, it was necessary for authorised officers to discharge 2 AEPs. 1 rioter was struck on the hand. Although 8 officers were injured in the line of duty on Saturday, we had no officers who have reported an injury on duty as a result of last night yet. Much has been made as to the availability of water cannon. Water cannon is a good tactical option that has remained available in Northern Ireland permanently. I acknowledge that we have supported our colleagues in Garda Síochána with the loan of some of our water cannon. However, we have always retained the capability locally, and we will use this if it is the right tactic to use in the circumstances. Last night it was considered not to be the most appropriate tactic, but that does not mean that it will not be used in the future. 1 teenage male was arrested last night and is currently being processed, and we are working at pace to identify those that were involved or those that were organising and orchestrating disorder. We have a significant and dedicated team working at pace, and we are working alongside the Public Prosecution Service to review evidence, make arrests and bring offenders to justice. We have set up the Major Incident Public Portal for public to submit information, images and footage, and we'll be releasing details about how people can do that. I would urge anybody who has evidence, footage or information that supports our investigation to come forwards with that information, either through Crime Stoppers or the other means that are available. I would also highlight the work that's ongoing to support those vulnerable and minority communities that have been particularly affected by these terrible events and disorder. We are working with those groups on a daily basis at pace to provide them with the support and reassurance and crime prevention advice that they need at this very difficult time. And I acknowledge their resilience on this matter. We are a resilient community. Lastly, I would like to thank and acknowledge the officers and staff who've been involved in the policing response to the recent disorders on the streets of Belfast. I would especially pay tribute to those on the front line who display unwavering commitment and bravery to keep communities safe in the face of despicable violence being levelled towards them and towards other people and properties.